Hello and welcome to JRock's Babylon. I'm your host, Jason JRock Houston, and our guest today is rocker Christian Shields. As I was sharing with you, Christian, before we went on the air, I'm just kind of learning about you through your publicist, Dave Tedder, who's given me a lot of great interviews over here. So thanks for this one, Dave, because I went on your YouTube page and I got to say, Christian, I was quite impressed. Best way to describe your sound is kind of 80s hard rock.
Well, thank you for having me, and Dave's been great. I'm glad to have him as a member of the team.
Yeah, in fact, as I always do, I was also sharing with you. I was researching you obviously before you come on the show. I like to know who and what I'm talking about. And you recently did an interview on Jason McMaster's podcast, where I learned that a couple years back you had done an independent movie where you played the role of Jason McMaster. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this guy Boudreaux Partita, who you know would he does independent films in Austin, and he wanted to do a documentary about Bloodied and Bruised. Um, Sorry, I screwed that up, dude.
That's
We
all
might have
right.
to
Go
cut that
ahead.
out. Hold on, no, we might have to cut that out. Hold on. Let me turn this off 'cause I'm getting distracted over here. Is there any chance we can start from the top? Sorry.
Well, we not really because I don't really have the tools to edit, but we can just go from here. It's kind of we like to do kind of raw and and edit it.
Oh, I know, but like that was kind of like a massive, massive thing on my part. So a company called Penny Rock Productions wanted to do a documentary movie about a club here in Austin called the documentary was called Bloodied and Bruised: The Untold Story of the Back Room, but the club was called the Back Room, and Dangerous Toys frequented there, and they asked me to play a role of a young Jason McMaster, because we kind of look similar vibe and all that stuff. And that's how I got introduced to him for doing that role. So I hope I did it justice.
Yeah, okay, I'm sure you did. Now let me ask you, because I know you're originally from Texas. Were you at all aware of Jason McMaster's and Dangerous Toys being from Texas? I know very
Yeah,
little.
so even though I'm originally from Rhode Island, there's a radio station in Rhode Island, HJY, and they would always do like a segment every day during the week at noon called Hair in Your Lunch, and they used to always play "Scared" by Dangerous Toys. So I was always familiar with them, and there used to be a show on VH1. um I can't think of the name of it, but it would always air at like 2 p.m. So after school, when I was in high school, they would always play the music video for Scared on whatever that TV show was. It wasn't Headbangers Ball, but I don't know what it was called. It was like a classic video rewind. So
Okay,
I've been familiar with them forever.
okay, and let's get into some of your music. Let's see. I checked out the latest video. I believe was for Fallen Rain or Fall Like Rain.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a great kind of all the videos that people go on your YouTube page. I got to say, Christian, they look like something very professional, like you would have seen on MTV back in the day. That one in particular, I mean, talk about, obviously you're not making them in the rain, but I mean, were you actually getting wet during the filming or?
Yeah, so the video was shot in New York City. We shot it on a soundstage in Brooklyn, and they have a rain room. So for scenes like that, think of it like stepping into a giant shower.
Wow.
And what's interesting is it's this giant shower head, and the water is very cold. And then to add even more rain effects, you have somebody standing there with like a garden hose, and you have them pointed up in the air so it can create. You could basically change if you want like light rainfall or if you want heavy rainfall. And yeah, so it was done in a contained soundstage.
And you know what kind of to expect that, I'm sure, ahead of the video shoot, but what was it like to have all that water come down to you while you're trying to perform?
Well, the director, Tom Flynn, when he suggested that for a scene, it was something that we hadn't done before, especially my guitar player and I, Marshall Benson. So we were looking forwad to it. We're like, hey, it's something cool. But with that, you know, before you even shoot, you got to get wet first because you
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
already have it, and then you got to do a couple rehearsal takes because you want to get you want to make sure the lighting and the angles and everything works. And then after that, you shoot for real. So, it wasn't that long, maybe 2 hours total between him
Uh,
and I. Because you just roll the takes. I mean, there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much you're looking for. So, and like we were fortunate to have a very good director who knew exactly what he was trying to get. So that was the end result.
and how involved with you are you with the editing of the video?
I wasn't involved at all. I basically just he showed me the cut, and then maybe there was a couple tweaks that we made to like different can we because we know we obviously you obviously want to film more than what you use because you can always take away, you can't add later. So there was maybe a couple tweaks we made, but it was like two cuts and then it was done. He just
And do you want to?
Tom just knew.
Oh wow! And do you want to share with us what the song's about, or would you rather people interpret it for themselves?
Well, I mean, you can interpret it for yourself, but it's also, I mean, it's basically just about a perspective I'm sure many of us have been through. It's just another relate breakup song, so to speak.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of kind of a cross section of great rockers. Probably Fallen Rain's maybe one of the softer tunes, but that's what I like is vocally you can do a little bit of everything. I mean, I was kind of curious when you first started playing music. Were you always a singer, or did you start out as a guitar player?
No, so actually, when I was 6, I started out playing clarinet in elementary school. I'm not really sure because I'd have to, I mean, I was too young to remember what my
Yeah.
reasoning was for starting, but that was what I started with was clarinet. But then, right around the time I turned about 11, so I was going fifth into sixth grade, I saw a video of Kiss. My dad had these bootleg tapes. So
Wow.
one of the concerts I remember is September 2nd, 1977, Love Gun Tour, in Houston at the Summit. I remember seeing that video, and within 30 seconds, seeing Paul Stanley come down the riser, and then he started strumming chords and pointing at the girls, and I said I want to do that. So after that point, I decided I didn't want to play clarinet anymore, and I wanted to be a rock and roller and play guitar.
Well,
But no,
and
I
you're
didn't
talking.
start as a singer.
Well, and you're talking to a guy that's a mutual huge Kiss fan. You're a lot younger than me, so it's interesting because when I was younger, I was they used to have this magazine called Circus Magazine, a great rock magazine back in the day. And one I remember buying an issue, and this guy advertising. He was a bootlegger. He was selling bootleg tapes like what you're talking about, and that's one of the concerts I got. So I know exactly the Houston, Texas one you're talking about. And that was a thing that really was popular back in the day, collecting those bootleg tapes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of them. I mean, my dad somehow got a bunch, but the two in particular that I remember the most, and I don't remember which show it was, but there was one from the Dynasty tour. It was when they played in Largo, Maryland, and then obviously I remember that Houston show. That was the one that did it for me.
Yeah, and so I'm sure I'm kind of so let me ask you, with the recent passing of Ace Frehley a few days ago, how did that affect you?
It just feels surreal. It doesn't feel real. Um, it's obviously it feels like the end of an era, like a lot of the icons and, cultural heroes, especially, from America, they seem to be passing on. And we're in a weird spot, I think, as a culture, especially when it comes to music and videos, and especially with, not to get political, but with all the political
Right.
turmoil, there seems to be a lack of identity in culture. So when somebody as iconic as Ace Frehley passes away, you can't help but feel a little aimless as to what comes next because these people were pillars that steered pop culture to what it is today. And I don't really see anybody coming up behind, not to replace, but to move the baton forward in the relay race. We don't really see these. I mean, sure, you could talk about maybe a guy like Youngblood, but he's English. He's not American. So we don't, other than Taylor Swift, we really don't have, you know, I guess a male counterpoint to that American culture. bringing that forward. So not to make a long answer to a short question, but I'm just saying it's just that I can't help but think about all these different things because he's just one of many, unfortunately. Ozzy, Hulk
Yeah.
Hogan, you know, it's kind of like these personalities are larger than life and they'll never be replaced.
Oh yeah, I mean, back in the 1970s, 80s when I was growing up, every major band had had the guitar hero, like what we're talking about. And it's funny because even like since Ace's death, everybody, the usual suspects come out, such as, not only his former bandmates, but even guys like Steve Vai, Brian May from Queen, and then you have some other people come out that you wouldn't really expect, like the guitar player from ABBA, Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac. They come out with a tribute taste, and which is kind of always, nice to hear that other people looked up to your hero. But it's just amazing the people that have come out to pay tribute to him. But that shows you not only what a huge talent he had, but the musical legacy he left behind. Yeah,
Well, impact,
yeah,
he,
impact.
he had an impact, sometimes people, they're larger than life, the
Yeah,
things that they do really shape culture.
and that's why, like when I was researching you last night and checking out all your music videos and things, Christian, one thing that really impressed me was there haven't been a lot of great new bands that come along, let's say in the last 10 years. There's not a truckload of rock stars like there used to be. One band that maybe is the exception to that is, I don't know if you're aware of who the Dead Daisies are, but, they have kind of a revolving door of like, famous guys from the 1980s. John Corabi is the current lead singer. But the point, like, that's a great band loaded up with like rock stars, and it seems to work no matter who's in the band because they've got great songs, they put on a great rock show, but there's not a truckload of bands like that. And then I watched, like I was saying last night, your music videos, and I'm like, this guy is putting on a presentation like he's a rock star. He's I haven't I'm not going to sit here and tell people I've seen you live because I haven't, but that's the whole point I'm trying to make. I'm watching these music videos, and I'm thinking last night, this guy's putting on a professional, representation of what he does. I haven't seen him, but I want watching these videos. I hope he comes to my town so I can go catch him out live.
Well, where are you, Jason? Where are you
Los
from?
Angeles.
Oh,
Yeah.
Los Angeles. Well, we just played well, not just played, but back in the spring with Trickster, we did the Whiskey in Hollywood and then we did the House of Blues in Anaheim.
See, I just missed you. Like I said, thanks to our mutual friend Dave. I wasn't aware until just this week, but now that I'm aware of you, I will be watching out for when
Yeah,
you come back.
and I appreciate that, but I am a rock star.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
But
just
I mean,
not at the level that they are yet.
and I joke about that because I remember like in the early 90s when grunge became a thing, and all these so-called hair bands and metal was no longer popular. A lot of those bands were like, we don't do guitar solos. I was like, why not? Yeah, that's what was missing, from that era of music.
Well, I mean, commercially, there's a business aspect to music that people want to ignore when you put
Mhm.
the words music business together.
Yeah,
Everybody always focuses on the word music and not the second word business. So, you know, if you want to be involved in the industry, you have to keep both words in mind. So
yeah.
that's to your point about not being guitar solos. But yeah, I mean, that was a different time, different era, and we're in this era now.
I think it's things tend to go in cycles. Like every 10 years, kind of the music kind of changes, but it eventually comes back to because I mean everything has its roots. Even if you go back to first music came out like the 1950s. I mean Elvis Presley had his roots, which included like gospel music and everything else in between. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, then another song I liked, not this time. Just great 80s hard rock with great melody.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's and another one. I think the latest single is "Raise Them Up." I really love the video for that. I mean, real kind of just a great band environment.
Well, Fall Like Rain is the latest single, but Raise 'Em Up was before that. And
Okay.
that's the show opener. And to me, it's just a statement, you could raise your fists up or you could raise your drink up. It's kind of
Yeah.
ambiguous like that.
Yeah. I mean, to me again, that's just really guitar driven. And I think even thinking about the live shows, you say, I mean, that's the kind of track that you could either open up with, or that could be the encore as well.
Nah, it's the opener. Maybe it'll be an encore someday. We're not at that point yet.
Yeah,
I still have
yeah,
a lot more music to put out before we get to that point.
yeah.
It's
And then
the strongest opener I have.
yeah, and again, I heard you talking on the other show with you did with Jason McMaster about the fact that you got one album out and you're like, I think my plan going forward is putting out, maybe 3 or 4 songs a year, and that seems to be the modern kind of method of doing it. But I think again, if the tracks are strong like what you've displayed so far, you just leave them wanting more, right?
Of course, but so the logic behind that is now there's two different categories of bands now. There's the album bands and then
Yeah.
there's the new bands. So if you have a legacy fan base and a large fan base, you can afford to put out a record because it's not so much the recording
Hmm.
costs. There's marketing costs,
Hmm.
there's the music video costs. So, these numbers can get pretty large. So and most people don't listen to an album all the way through. They listen
Yeah.
to 3 to maybe 5 songs and then and then they put it away because most people listen in the car or at the gym or whatever. Now, people will say, "Oh, but Christian, I listen to albums," and it's like, "Look, I do too." But here's the thing: I'm looking at the numbers, and I know people don't want to say that. The numbers tend to not lie, and you can kind of see where
Hmm.
how people consume the media. So to
Yeah.
me, people don't add albums to playlists, they add songs that they like. So to me, I think moving forward, it's back to and you said things come in cycles. Well, back when Elvis Presley's era, it was about the singles. So I think that it's going to be singles for now, and I'm not ruling out doing more records in the future, but I just think that moving forward right now, as I continue to grow my fan base and play and establish myself now on the national level, this is I think is the plan moving forward for right
And
now.
I think even, too, after a couple of years of doing this, maybe when you have like 10 or 11 more songs you've released at that point, maybe it's time to think, okay, well, I got enough material. I could put it out a CD if I thought it was, worth doing so. Because again, even me as a consumer of music, see that for a while, what became modern thing to do was, oh, we'll just put out a 3 or 4 song EP, which is kind of a fun thing to do. But me, myself, maybe because it's the era I grew up in, okay, if you're going to give me some new music, I'm kind of greedy here. I want a whole album worth of material. You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, I understand, Jason, but my adage is basically this: it's just gonna make sense. If it makes sense, that's
No,
it. It's gonna
no,
make sense
I
to me.
get it. I get it. But I guess what I was saying is, I think it makes more sense to kind of do it your way because people aren't, let's be honest, people aren't buying CDs like they used to. And I think at the same time, because there is a huge percentage of artists that they got like maybe 1 or 2 albums out even, and they're at a point where hey, nobody's buying CDs, so why bother recording new music? So the fact that you're doing it the way you are and you're continuing to pump out great new music, I'm all for that, as opposed to saying, you know what, I got some great music out there. We're just gonna live off of that. I think it's much more cool the way you're doing it because at least the fans are getting some new music in the meantime. Yeah,
Well, also, you don't necessarily need to tour in support of an album anymore.
yeah, yeah.
They're not, I've said this many times on many different shows. They're not mutually exclusive because of the internet and because of smartphones. I still don't think that the industry or even some of the old heads, no offense to them, I really don't think they've adapted to this technology.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, to me, it's like, again, you don't need to tour in support of an album, and you could do a tour leg, maybe put out a new song and then tour some more. Everything's relevant at all times because of the internet. So even songs that they say are old, it's
Yeah,
like, no, you could just keep re-putting them back out in front of people or promoting them because again, everything is relevant at all times. The
sure,
internet's the
sure.
ultimate time machine.
And Christian, you mentioned playing the whiskey, a couple of months back. What was that? What do you remember from that show, and how did that opportunity come up as far as an up and coming artist such as yourself getting a chance to play such a legendary?
Well, I've played the whiskey before. It's just that this again, I was on tour with Trickster as part of the tour package. So at that show, Pretty Boy Floyd wasn't part of it because they were over in Japan.
Oh,
So it was me, Trickster, and then a bunch of locals. But it's always a good time. The crowd's always great there. And Hollywood is very receptive to Christian Shields, which I appreciate. The Hollywood definitely loves my band and myself, and it was great to basically, you know, not quite headline the whiskey, but getting one step closer.
Yeah, I mean, that's not nothing too shabby. Because a lot of people wish they could say they played there. That's a lot of musicians have that dream, and I don't think it necessarily it matters if you're a headliner or not. The fact that you get to play that famous stage, I don't really think you're that far away. You'll get there.
Well, it's definitely a vibe thing. It's definitely cool. There's a great energy in the room because of everybody that's been on that stage. But to me, you know, this kind of sounds like backhanded, but to me, it's just a room. And, the room to me is I mean, sure, there's a vibe and there's an energy and that can help, but, I'll play anywhere. So,
Yeah,
what I mean? I think any show is cool.
yeah. Well, of course. What's amazing in a place like that, though, is I think it's legendary status. You know what I mean? And what's interesting, because I've been there, seen many shows, and yet you can attest to this. The room is very small. The stage is very small. But if you allow yourself to think, hey, that's the same stage Jim Morrison and Eddie Van Halen and the guys in Motley Crue and Rat stood on. Um, that's a fun little thing to kind of think about. But if you actually go in the room, it's not a huge room.
No, it's not the biggest club, but it's like I said, I mean it's cool, and
Oh yeah,
I'm
it's
glad to
definitely
have
cool.
that feather in my cap.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I guess what I'm saying is, and I actually went to see a tribute band there, and what was pretty cool, they used to have this show on Access TV, like called I think it was the Greatest Tribute Bands, and
Hmm.
and a lot of it for one season they were doing it down there, and what was interesting is, like you see the red light goes on, and that lets okay, we're filming now, and I couldn't believe like it was a great concert, but because it was a TV show, like it happened really, really quick. Like before you knew it was like, wow, that's a great show, but man, wow, it was over before we knew it. Yeah,
So it happens that quick sometimes.
yeah, yeah. And so, how often do you get to play out live, Christian?
Well, I mean, I can play out as often as I would like, but to me, the shows that I do at this point is they got to make sense, they cost money to
Hmm.
put on, and I like to do like make it more of like an event than a show.
Yeah.
So I've been more selective as of late, but we basically did two tours this year. I'm not sure. I mean, there's still a little bit of year left. I mean, we could get offered something or do
Hmm.
something, but right now it's kind of just waiting to see what develops and kind of doing this little podcast tour thing here that I'm on.
Oh,
But
that's cool.
maybe we'll do some cool stuff in 2026. I don't like to say things before they happen.
Yeah, yeah,
So I just announce things when they happen. Yes, there's always things in the works, but things in the industry move slow. People, don't understand that when a tour is announced, it was booked and planned, 6 months before that to a year before that. So sometimes
yeah,
even longer. So,
yeah.
you know,
And I can just tell you because of my own age, how different things were back when I was growing up. Bands used to I don't know if you realize, but bands used to like they would be playing out live, like they'd go on a major tour, they'd be playing out live, 7 nights a week.
mhm.
It's not quite like that. Even a lot of the bands in the '80s now they do these weekend shows. So everybody's not touring like they used to as frequently, but people still love to go out and see a live show. People love to go see great new up and coming artists like you. So I'm glad to have you on the show and kind of have this opportunity to get to know you, Christian, because I can tell really also in listening to all your music videos and the songs, you've got a real knack for songwriting. All your songs seem to have great hooks. Um, how long have you been writing music?
Well, I mean, I've been writing since since I first picked up guitar when I was 12. I
Uh-huh.
just kind of like starting with simple stuff. To me, when it comes to writing, and I thank you for saying that, um, I write songs that I enjoy listening to
Uh-huh.
and that I enjoy playing, and hopefully that translates to the crowd. Like if I'm not having fun singing the song or playing this song, I don't think it's a good song. Um, and to me, I don't think it needs to be complicated. When I write songs, I don't write songs for other musicians. I don't try to write the most complicated riffs or, try to do these crazy vocal runs. Sure, could I do it? Yeah. But I just let the song tell me what to do. It's kind of like I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm putting my own spin on it, as the great Paul Stanley says,
Mhm.
you know, um, or Gene Simmons rather. One of them said it. And then I just keep it simple. That's it. I mean, if something calls for something a little bit more intricate, that's what I got my guitar player Marshall Benson for. That's his job.
Okay, because too, typically I listen to hard rock and metal, but I'll tell you, I also listen to other stuff like everything from the Eagles to Tom Petty, CCR, and that's like because this is music that was written like 40, 50 years ago. It's still being played on the radio, and simply because there's such great rhythm songs, they kind of tell a story. People really, really get into that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I also want to ask you, I understand your brother was a drummer and you guys used to play together. Is he older than you or are you guys about the
Yeah.
same age?
No, he's older.
And and what was that like, when you guys were playing music together?
Well, I mean, I loved it. That was the one thing that we had in common. My brother and I are two different people. Like outside of music, we have nothing in common.
Wow.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, I enjoyed it. But we're two different people with two different goals
sure.
and you know, aspirations. So it's just like you know,
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is what it is. Because there are a lot of famous brothers. Like of course we had the Van Halen brothers, and that was they loved each other, and even Alex wrote a book. Kind of his tribute to his brother and their life together, and the music business. And then you had like the guys in the Black Crows, and they really seem to have a love hate thing, and they went years without speaking. But I'm glad to report they finally got back together. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I have a good relationship with my brother. It's just we want to do two different things, and that's okay.
Yeah, that totally. I mean, I don't want to give you a wrong idea, Christian, because I really am. I am a big fan of what you do, and I am. I really want to put the word out. I mean, not that you need me to do it, but
No, the word of mouth is the most effective method of promotion.
uh,
Tell all your friends. It helps so much.
yeah, that's basically what we do here. We want to spread the love and make people aware of this great music. And I urge people to go on the YouTube page because ton of great music, ton of great videos. They all really do look professional. The last thing I want to ask you about is you also had a lyric video for it song Off the Track. Now, what I thought was cool about that, it opens up and it's kind of it got these railroad tracks. Kind of reminded me of the Crazy Train video, but I wanted to ask you about that because that's another kind of modern thing bands are doing. These lyric videos, which is kind of different than the typical music video. I was kind of curious. You want to talk about that track and the lyric video and how you your views on doing lyric videos versus typical music videos.
Well, I think that was like lyric videos, I think were kind of where I believe were, what was hot at
Yeah,
that moment. But again, because of people's attention span getting smaller and smaller, I'm not ruling out doing more lyric videos in the future because sure, it's a cheaper alternative to doing a
yeah,
music video and people like reading the lyrics. But I think that now it's just going to be more traditional music videos. And I don't think I'm gonna do as many lyric videos. Again, I can
yeah,
change my mind before anybody holds my feet to the fire. I just think it's more or less content and just having something for the fans and people to look at. And I think it's a great lyric video. I think it's cool. I think it almost stands alone as its own music video because of the graphics and all that
yeah.
are in it. But my view on it is
Yeah, no,
bands made that in response to because fans were making their own lyric videos to songs
yeah, yeah.
in the early days of YouTube. Well, I wouldn't say the early days of YouTube, but I would say like 2012 era.
Yeah,
So bands started doing that, but I'd have to look at more of the numbers, and it doesn't seem that when people share the videos, they share the Fall Like Rain video.
yeah.
I don't necessarily.
One thing I loved about lyric videos though is I love the fact because it does serve the purpose. It makes people pay attention to the lyrics. I don't know about you, Christian, but when I was growing up, there's so many songs that I was listening to that I got the I got the words wrong. If you know what I mean? I'd be singing along, and then find
Yeah.
out years later, hey, I've been singing the wrong, the wrong word to the song.
Yep.
So it's great for that. I
I
just want
agree.
to say before we go, Christian, why don't you let people know where they can find you online, and if they want to purchase the album or any merchandise, how they can do that?
Of course. So christianshields.net, facebook.com/Christian Shields Live, on X at C Shields Live, TikTok at Christian Shields Live, Instagram at Christian Shields Live. I'm on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, the internet. Just Google me. I will come up at first search, I promise.
For sure, Christian. It was great getting to know you. I really want to welcome you back down the line, like you said. When you have something else to promote, which I'm sure you will. Happy Halloween, happy holidays. I can't believe I'm getting ready to say, Happy New Year, because it's going to be a new year before you know it. So,
Yeah, I'm with you, dude. Time goes by faster and faster. Yes.
okay, take care, my friend, and I'll send you the link later because I'm going to post the interview later today. And thanks again for Dave for setting this up. It was great getting to know Christian.
Thanks. Thanks for
Bye
having
bye.
me.
Take care.